A whisper in the void. The stars were dying around Vess's ship. At least, that's what it looked like as the emergency lights flickered and the view screen glitched between darkness and the terrible scene outside. The Shard Collective's flagship loomed like a massive crystalline predator, its reflective surfaces catching and fragmenting starlight into deadly beams that cut through Vess's shields as if they were nothing. Vess, the lone Thelian explorer from a peaceful species in the Andromeda Arm, pressed back against the captain's chair as another blast rocked the small research vessel. Warning signals blared through the cabin, and the ship's AI spoke in a calm voice that betrayed none of the panic Vess felt coursing through his four-chambered heart. Critical hull breach in sections 7 through 12. Life support failing. Shields at 8% capacity. Estimated time until complete system failure, 4 minutes and 27 seconds. Vess's membranous wings fluttered in agitation, the bioluminescent patterns across his blue skin pulsing rapidly with fear. He wasn't a warrior. He was a scientist, an explorer seeking new life and new civilizations. But the Shard Collective didn't care about his peaceful intentions. They only saw resources to harvest, technology to assimilate, and knowledge to steal. Any response to our diplomatic signals? Vess asked, knowing the answer already. Negative. The Shard Collective has ignored 17 attempts at communication. Of course they had. The Collective had been systematically conquering or destroying every intelligent species they encountered for the past 20 years, expanding outward from their home system like a virus. No one knew what they really looked like inside those crystalline ships. Some said they were no longer organic at all, but living matrices of consciousness stored in geometric lattices. Another blast hit, and the ship lurched sideways. The view screen went completely dark, and for a moment, Vess thought this was the end. Emergency power rerouted to critical systems, the AI announced. Communications still functional. Vess closed his eyes, making a quick decision. Communications were still working. That meant one last option, a desperate one, but the only one left. Open all frequencies, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. Maximum range. Warning. Broadcasting on all frequencies will reveal our position to any nearby hostiles. They already know where we are, Vess replied grimly. Execute command. The console lit up, and Vess leaned forward, pressing his palm against the biometric reader. His species communicated partially through bioluminescence, and the ship's communications array was designed to translate not just his words, but the light patterns flowing across his skin. Encoding emotion, urgency, and truth in ways that words alone could not. This is Vess of the Thelian science vessel Horizon Seeker. He began, his skin pulsing with bright, desperate patterns. We are under attack by the Shard Collective. Our weapons are non-functional, our shields failing. To any peaceful species who can hear this message, we require immediate assistance. He paused, another explosion rocking the ship. The lights dimmed further. 1 minute until complete system failure, the AI informed him dispassionately. Vess closed his eyes, thinking of his homeworld, of the family he might never see again. His bioluminescence shifted to a deep, sorrowful blue as he continued. Even if you cannot reach us in time, heed this warning. The Collective is expanding into your sectors. They do not negotiate. They do not show mercy. They take everything and leave nothing but broken worlds and dead stars. Please, help us, or at least, remember us. The transmission ended as another blast struck the ship, and Vess was thrown forward against the console. Blood, copper-based and violet, trickled from a cut on his forehead. He couldn't see the shard ship anymore through the view screen, but he could feel the ship being pulled by a tractor beam. Entering standby mode to preserve life support, the AI announced, its voice fading. Good luck, Vess. As darkness claimed the cabin, Vess didn't expect his message to be heard. After all, this sector had been empty for centuries, ever since the mysterious disappearance of the species that once inhabited the small blue-green world in a nearby system. a species called humans. The signal reached Earth 3 days later, or rather, it reached what remained of Earth's monitoring systems. The planet was officially abandoned, its surface bearing the scars of the last war that had driven humanity to the brink of extinction. Cities stood empty, reclaimed by nature after 2 centuries of absence. Wildlife flourished in the ruins of what had once been the crown jewel of human civilization. But deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a facility that had survived both the war and the passage of time, a system awakened. Ancient servers hummed to life, processing the alien distress call, analyzing its origins, its language patterns, and its emotional content. Then, silently, the signal was relayed, not to Earth, which was empty of human life, but to Mars, where humanity had gone to hide from the galaxy that had nearly destroyed them. Commander Elena Torres stood at the view screen in the central command chamber of New Olympus, the largest of the 7 domed cities that now house what remained of the human race. Through the reinforced glass, she could see the ruddy Martian landscape stretching to the horizon, dotted with agricultural domes and mining facilities. "The signal was authenticated 20 minutes ago," said Admiral Reyes, standing beside her. "It's definitely from an unknown alien species, and they're definitely in trouble." Elena frowned, studying the holographic representation of the distress signal floating between them. The alien's strange bioluminescent patterns had been translated into colored waves that pulsed alongside the audio translation. "And you brought this to me before taking it to the Council because..." Reyes's weathered face tightened. "Because you know what the Council will say. They'll vote to ignore it, just like they've ignored every other sign of alien activity for the past 50 years. He wasn't wrong. After the last war, the conflict that had driven humanity from Earth and forced them to fake their own extinction, the governing council had adopted a strict policy of isolation. No contact with alien species, no signals sent into space, nothing that might reveal that humanity had survived. For 200 years, they had lived this way, hidden, safe, stagnant. This alien, Vess, is probably already dead," Elena said quietly. "The transmission is 3 days old." "Probably," Reyes agreed. "But that's not really the point, is it?" Elena turned away from the view screen, facing the Admiral directly. "Then what is the point?" "The point is that the galaxy is changing again. This Shard Collective sounds like bad news, the kind that eventually finds everyone, even those in hiding. Maybe especially those in hiding." Elena considered this. The last war had begun when humanity, new to interstellar travel, had inadvertently drawn the attention of multiple alien species. Some had been peaceful, but others had seen humans as either a threat or an opportunity. The resulting conflict had nearly wiped out humanity entirely. "You want to break isolation," she said. It wasn't a question. Reyes nodded. "I think it's time. We've spent 2 centuries rebuilding, advancing our technology, preparing for a return that never comes. Meanwhile, there are people out there, beings like this Vess, who need help. Isn't that what humanity was supposed to stand for?" Before the fear took over, before Elena could respond, her comm unit chimed. "The Council is convening an emergency session," said a voice. "Your presence is required immediately, Commander." The Council chamber was a perfect circle, with 7 seats arranged around a central holographic projector. Currently, the projector was displaying the translated alien distress call, the strange blue being's desperate plea playing on a loop with the sound muted. "This changes nothing," Counselor John was saying as Elena entered. "Our policy is clear. No contact with alien species, even if they're being slaughtered by this collective." Counselor Okafor countered. "Are we going to hide forever while the galaxy burns around us?" "If necessary, yes," Jean replied coldly. "We tried to help before. We tried to be the heroes. It cost us Earth." The oldest member of the council, Counselor Miyazaki, raised a gnarled hand for silence. At 132, he was one of the few who had been born on Earth, who remembered the blue skies and vast oceans of humanity's birthplace. "Commander Torres," he said, his voice surprisingly strong despite his age. "You've reviewed the signal. What is your assessment?" All eyes turned to Elena. As the commander of Mars Defense Forces, her opinion carried weight, especially in matters of potential threat assessment. "The signal appears genuine," she said carefully. "The being, Vess, is from a species we've never encountered before. The threat they describe, this Shard Collective, is unknown to us but seems to pose a significant danger." "And your recommendation?" Miyazaki pressed. Elena hesitated, feeling the weight of the moment. What she said next could determine humanity's course for generations to come. "I recommend we send a reconnaissance mission," she said finally. "A small force, our newest stealth ships. Observe only, no contact unless absolutely necessary." The chamber erupted in voices, some outrage, others supportive. "Absolutely not. It's about time. We can't risk exposure. We can't hide forever." Miyazaki raised his hand again, and gradually, silence fell. "May I remind the Council," he said quietly, "that when we chose to hide, it was meant to be temporary, a chance to rebuild, to prepare, not to cower in the dark forever. With respect, Counselor," Jean cut in, "your generation made the decisions that nearly ended humanity. Perhaps you should leave the survival decisions to those who will live with the consequences." A tense silence followed this remark. Elena watched Miyazaki's face, expecting anger, but instead saw only sadness. "My generation made many mistakes," the old man acknowledged. "But our greatest achievement was surviving. Not just physically, but holding on to what makes us human. Compassion, courage, the willingness to extend a hand to those in need." He looked around the chamber. "If we've lost that, then perhaps humanity did die in the last war, and we are merely its ghost." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Finally, Counselor Okafor spoke. "I move that we put Commander Torres' recommendation to a vote. A reconnaissance mission only, with strict protocols against engagement unless necessary for the survival of our forces." "Seconded," said another counselor. One by one, the votes were cast. 3 for, 3 against. All eyes turned to Miyazaki, who held the deciding vote. The old man closed his eyes briefly, as if looking into the past, or perhaps the future. "Yes," he said simply. 3 days later, Elena stood on the bridge of the Aurora, humanity's most advanced stealth vessel. Around her, the crew worked with quiet efficiency, preparing for humanity's first intentional venture beyond the solar system in 2 centuries. "Stealth systems at full capacity," reported her first officer, Commander Jackson. "The fleet is ready, Commander." Elena nodded, taking in the sight of the 5 ships that would accompany them on this mission. Small, sleek, and nearly invisible to conventional sensors, they represented the pinnacle of human technological development during their long isolation. "Any final orders from the Council?" she asked. Jackson shook his head. "Just a reminder of the mission parameters. Reconnaissance only. No engagement unless necessary for survival." Elena turned to the view screen, which showed the vast emptiness of space beyond Mars. "And if we find survivors?" she asked quietly. Jackson hesitated. The Council was unclear on that point. "I believe they're leaving it to your discretion, Commander." In other words, they didn't want to make that decision. Typical. "Navigation," Elena called. "Set course for the origin point of the distress signal. Maximum stealth protocols throughout the journey." "Course set, Commander." Elena took a deep breath, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. After 2 centuries of hiding, humanity was about to announce its survival to the galaxy, or at least to whatever remained of this alien scientist and the mysterious Shard Collective that had attacked him. "Engage," she ordered. As the fleet accelerated away from Mars, Elena couldn't help but wonder if they were making the right decision, or if, like their ancestors, they were about to learn the hard way that some parts of the galaxy were best left unexplored. But then she remembered the desperation in the alien's voice, the plea not just for help but for remembrance. And she knew, whatever happened next, they couldn't hide forever. It was time for humanity to face the stars again. The return of humanity. The Aurora dropped out of FTL at the edge of the system, sensors immediately sweeping the area for signs of the distress signal's origin. The 5-ship human fleet maintained stealth protocols, their advanced hulls absorbing rather than reflecting light, their engines running silent. On the bridge, Commander Elena Torres leaned forward in her chair, eyes fixed on the tactical display. The system was unfamiliar, a red dwarf star with 3 small rocky planets and an asteroid belt. But what caught her attention was the debris field scattered near the 3rd planet. "Analysis?" she asked quietly. Lieutenant Chen at the science station worked quickly, his hands dancing over the holographic interface. Debris consistent with a small vessel, approximately 30 meters in length. Energy signatures suggest it was destroyed roughly 5 days ago. "The Thelian ship," Commander Jackson murmured. Elena nodded grimly. They were too late to prevent the attack, just as she'd feared. But something else caught her eye on the display, a faint energy reading near the edge of the asteroid belt. "What's that?" she asked, pointing. Chen adjusted the sensors, focusing on the anomaly. "It appears to be a life pod, Commander. Very small, minimal power output, but it's intact." Elena felt her pulse quicken. Life signs. A moment of silence as Chen refined the scan. "Yes, one life form, but the readings are weak. Definitely not human physiology." "Vess," Elena said. The alien scientist had survived, at least long enough to escape in a life pod. "And the hostiles? Any sign of the Shard Collective ships?" "Negative, Commander. The system appears clear except for the life pod." Elena weighed her options quickly. The Council's orders had been clear: reconnaissance only. No contact unless absolutely necessary for survival. But there was a life at stake, the very life that had sent the distress call that brought them here. "Prepare a medical team," she decided. "We're bringing that pod aboard." Jackson looked concerned. "Commander, the Council isn't here," Elena finished. "And I'm not going to leave someone to die when we have the ability to help. That's not who we are." She paused, then added more softly, "Or at least, that's not who we're supposed to be." Jackson hesitated, then nodded, understanding the weight of the moment. "Yes, Commander." The life pod was smaller than Elena had expected, barely large enough to contain its single occupant. As it was towed into the Aurora's hangar bay by tractor beam, the medical team stood ready, led by Dr. Maya Patel, the ship's chief medical officer. Elena and Jackson stood back, giving the medical team space to work. The pod's hatch was sealed with unfamiliar technology, but the engineering crew managed to open it without damaging the mechanisms. As the hatch slid open, Elena got her first look at a non-human intelligent species in the flesh, something no human had seen in over 2 centuries. Vess was humanoid in basic shape: 2 arms, 2 legs, a central torso and head. But the similarities ended there. His skin was a deep blue, covered in delicate patterns that glowed faintly. What Elena had first taken for clothing was actually a pair of thin, membranous wings folded tightly against his back. His face was alien but expressive, with large, silvery eyes currently closed and a mouth that seemed to have no lips. Dr. Patel moved in quickly with her medical scanner, hovering it over the alien's body. "He's alive, but barely. Severe dehydration, multiple internal injuries, and..." She paused, frowning at her readings, "something I can't quite identify affecting his bioluminescence patterns. They're erratic." "Can you help him?" Elena asked. Patel looked uncertain. "His physiology is completely alien. I'll do everything I can, but I need data, comparative baselines." At that moment, a small device in the pod lit up, and a holographic interface appeared. The ship's eye, recognizing it as a data storage device, automatically began translating. "It's a medical database," Chen reported, scanning the information as it was translated. Looks like Vess included information about Thelian physiology in his emergency beacon. Smart. Send it all to medical, Alina ordered. Doctor, do whatever you can. As Paddle's team carefully transferred Vess to a stretcher and rushed him to the medical bay, Alina turned to Jackson. I want a full analysis of that debris field. Let's find out exactly what happened here. And if the Shard Collective returns while we're playing rescue mission? Jackson asked quietly. Alina's expression hardened. Then they'll learn that humanity isn't as extinct as the galaxy thinks. It took 12 hours for Dr. Paddle to stabilize Vess, working from the translated medical database and her own considerable expertise. During that time, Alina and her team analyzed the debris field, piecing together the attack that had destroyed the Thelian ship. The weapons signatures are unusual, Commander Jackson reported in the briefing room. Crystalline-based energy weapons, unlike anything in our database. Extremely powerful, but with distinct energy fluctuations. Weaknesses? Alina asked. Potentially. The crystalline structure seems to require a specific resonance frequency to maintain cohesion. Disrupt that, and the weapons might fail. Alina nodded, filing away that information. And the collective ship itself. Any data on its capabilities. Nothing concrete from the debris analysis, but Vess's ship managed to record some sensor data before it was destroyed. Jackson brought up a hologram of a massive, angular vessel that seemed to be made of interlocking crystal structures. It's big, at least 3 times the size of the Aurora. Heavily armed, advanced shielding. But again, the crystalline construction suggests potential vulnerabilities. Further discussion was interrupted by Dr. Patel's voice over the comm. Commander, our patient is awake, and he's asking to speak with whoever's in charge. When Alina entered the medical bay, she found Vess sitting upright on the biobed, his large silver eyes taking in everything around him with obvious curiosity and caution. His skin's bioluminescent patterns pulsed softly in what Alina somehow intuited was a mix of anxiety and wonder. He turned as she approached, and for a moment, they simply regarded each other, human and alien, meeting for the first time. I am Commander Alina Torres of the Earth vessel Aurora, she said, deciding on honesty. We received your distress signal. The translation system integrated into her uniform collar converted her words, and Vess's large eyes widened further. Earth, he responded, his own words translated by the system. But Earth was destroyed. Humans are extinct. This is what all galactic records indicate. Alina smiled slightly. Reports of our extinction were greatly exaggerated. A deliberate deception on our part, after the last war. Vess's bioluminescence flashed in what might have been surprise. You've been hiding all this time. The last war was over 2 centuries ago. We needed time to recover, to rebuild. Alina explained. The war nearly destroyed us. Rather than risk further conflict, we chose isolation. Vess seemed to consider this, his patterns shifting to a thoughtful blue. And yet you came when you heard my call. Why? It was a simple question, but Alina felt its weight. Why indeed? After centuries of isolation, why risk everything for a single alien scientist? Because it was the right thing to do, she said finally. Because despite everything that happened to us, we haven't forgotten who we are. Before Vess could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Alina's comm unit activated immediately. Commander to the bridge, came Jackson's urgent voice. They're back. When Alina reached the bridge, the tactical display told the story. A Shard Collective vessel, the same one from Vess's recordings, had entered the system, heading directly for the debris field. Behind her, she heard the medical bay doors open as Vess, against Dr. Patel's protests, followed her to the bridge. They're searching for survivors, Vess said, his voice tight with fear. They never leave witnesses. They can't detect us, Jackson assured him. Our stealth technology won't matter, Vess interrupted. The collective doesn't rely solely on conventional sensors. They can detect the neural patterns of conscious minds across vast distances. It's how they hunt. They already know we're here. As if confirming his words, the crystal ship abruptly changed course, heading directly toward the human fleet's position. Stealth has failed, the tactical officer reported. They'd locked weapons on us. Elena made her decision in an instant. Battle stations. Defensive formation beta. Shields at maximum. Around her, the bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, and throughout the ship, personnel rushed to their combat positions. It had been 2 centuries since humans had fought an interstellar battle, but they had never stopped preparing for this moment. "They're hailing us," reported the communications officer. Elena nodded. On screen. The view screen flickered, and Elena found herself looking at nothing recognizable. What appeared was a shifting, multifaceted crystalline structure that pulsed with internal light. When it spoke, the voice was unlike anything human ears had ever heard, a harmonic convergence of tones that the translation system struggled to process. "Unidentified vessel," it finally translated. "You harbor a witness to collective expansion. Surrender the Thelian and your ship will be permitted to leave this system intact." Elena felt Vess tense beside her, but she kept her own expression neutral. "This is Commander Elena Torres of the Earth vessel Aurora. The being under our protection has committed no crime that we recognize. We will not surrender him." There was a pause, and the crystalline structure seemed to shift, refracting light differently. "Earth." The harmonic voice held what might have been surprise. "Earth was cleansed during the species purge of the last war. Humans are extinct." Elena allowed herself a small smile. "Evidently not." Another pause. Longer this time. "Interesting. The collective had incomplete data. This will be corrected. You will all be assimilated. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own." The transmission cut off abruptly. "They're powering weapons," reported the tactical officer. "Evasive maneuvers," Elena ordered. "All ships engage as planned." The human fleet scattered in a practiced formation, each ship moving in a different vector to divide the collective's attention. The crystal ship fired, brilliant beams of energy that cut through space where the Aurora had been moments before. "Return fire," Elena commanded. "Target their propulsion systems." The Aurora fired its main cannons, advanced energy weapons developed during humanity's long isolation. The beams struck the crystal ship's shields, which flared but held. "Minimal damage," reported the tactical officer. "Their shields are adapting to our weapon's frequency." Elena had expected as much. Modulate and fire again. All ships coordinate fire on the same shield section. As the battle unfolded, Vess watched in amazement. "Your technology. It's far more advanced than what was recorded about humans before their supposed extinction." "We've had 200 years to focus on development," Elena replied, not taking her eyes off the tactical display, "without the distractions of interstellar politics or trade." The human fleet moved with remarkable coordination, almost as if the ships were extensions of a single mind. Each vessel fired in precise sequence, their weapons hitting the same shield section repeatedly, but at different frequencies. "Their shield is weakening in Sector 4, reported the tactical officer. "Concentrate fire," Elena ordered, "and prepare to deploy the resonance disruptors." Vess looked at her sharply. "Resonance disruptors," Jackson explained quickly. "Based on the analysis of their weapons, we developed a countermeasure. A field that should disrupt the crystalline structure of their technology." "You developed that in hours?" Vess asked incredulously. "We've had a lot of practice adapting quickly," Elena said grimly. "When you're hiding from the galaxy, you learn to be prepared for anything." The collective ship fired again, this time hitting one of the smaller human vessels. Its shields flared and held, but Elena could see it was damaged. "Now," she ordered, "deploy the disruptors." From the Aurora and its companion ships, small probes launched toward the crystal vessel. As they neared, they activated, creating an overlapping field of precisely calibrated energy. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The crystalline structure of the collective ship began to vibrate visibly, the smooth facets of its hull surface developing small fractures. Its weapons fire became erratic, beams dissipating before they reached their targets. "It's working," Jackson said, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. "Press the advantage," Alina commanded. "All ships, target their weapons arrays." The human fleet responded immediately, concentrating fire on the now vulnerable weapons systems of the crystal ship. Explosions blossomed across its surface as energy beams found their marks. Vess watched in astonishment. His people were peaceful researchers and explorers. They had no defense against the collective. Yet these humans, supposed to be extinct, were not only fighting back, but winning. "They're retreating," the tactical officer announced, setting course out of the system. "Let them go," Alina ordered, "but maintain battle readiness. They could be calling for reinforcements." As the crystal ship limped away, accelerating to FTL at the edge of the system, a tense silence fell over the bridge. They had won the skirmish, but Alina knew this was just the beginning. Vess broke the silence. "They will return, with more ships. The collective never retreats permanently." "Then we'll be ready," Alina said. She turned to face Vess fully. "Your distress signal mentioned that the collective has been conquering systems throughout this sector. How many worlds have fallen? How many species have been affected?" "Dozens," Vess replied solemnly. "My people, the Thelians, are only the latest. We were peaceful explorers with minimal defenses. Many others were the same. The militaristic species fought longer but eventually fell as well. The collective adapts to all conventional weapons and tactics." "But they've never faced humans before," Alina said. "And we've spent 2 centuries preparing for a fight we hoped would never come." Vess's bioluminescence pulsed with what Alina was beginning to recognize as hope. "You would help us, all of you, but your policy of isolation has served its purpose," Alina finished. "We hid to survive, to rebuild. But we always knew we'd return to the stars eventually." She looked around at her crew, seeing determination in their eyes. "Perhaps this is why. Perhaps we were meant to be here, now, when the galaxy needs us most." Jackson approached, holding a datapad. "Commander, I've analyzed the collective ship's retreat vector. Based on their trajectory and communications emissions, I believe I've pinpointed their home system." Alina took the pad, studying the stellar map. "Send this data to Mars. The Council needs to understand what we're facing." "And what will you tell them?" Vess asked. Alina looked at the alien scientist, seeing not a strange being from another world, but a person who had risked everything to warn others of a coming darkness. "I'll tell them that humanity can't hide anymore," she said, "that there are people out there who need our help, and that helping them is the most human thing we can do." 2 weeks later, Alina stood in the council chamber on Mars, the holographic projector showing images of the battle with the Shard collective ship. Beside her stood Vess, the first alien to set foot on Martian soil in over 2 centuries. "The collective has already dispatched their main fleet," she explained to the silent counselors. "According to the data we've gathered, they'll reach the Thelian home system within a month. After that, they'll continue their expansion until they eventually find us." "You're suggesting we abandon isolation completely," Counselor Zhang said, his voice cold. "Risk everything we've rebuilt." "I'm suggesting we stop hiding from a fight that will find us eventually," Alina countered. "The collective doesn't stop. They don't negotiate. And now they know humans still exist. Perhaps if we move deeper into the system, increased our stealth protocols." Another counselor began. "No," interrupted Counselor Miyazaki, his aged voice firm. "Commander Torres is right. We went into hiding to heal, to prepare, not to cower forever." He stood slowly, his eyes moving from Alina to Vess, and back again. "For too long, we have defined ourselves by our fear. Fear of extinction, fear of repetition of the past. But that is not who we are." He gestured to Vess. "This being sent a call for help into the darkness. expecting nothing. And humanity answered, "That is who we are. That is who we have always been, beneath the fear and the pain." The chamber fell silent as the old man's words sank in. Finally, Counselor Okafor spoke. "What would you have us do, Commander?" Elena straightened her shoulders. "Deploy the fleet. All of it. Not just for reconnaissance, not just for defense, but to stand with the species being threatened by the collective. To show the galaxy that humanity has returned. And this time, we're fighting not just for ourselves, but for everyone." Vess stepped forward, his bioluminescence glowing with emotion. "My people have records of the last war, of how humans fought to protect not just themselves but their allies. Many believe humans were destroyed because they refused to abandon those they had promised to defend." He looked around at the council. "If that is truly who you are, who you have always been, then the galaxy needs you now more than ever." One by one, the councilors voted. This time, there was no tie. The decision was unanimous. As Elena and Vess left the chamber, she could feel the weight of history shifting around them. For 2 centuries, humanity had hidden in the shadows, nursing their wounds, building their strength. Now they would step back into the light, not as conquerors, not even primarily as warriors, but as defenders. "What happens now?" Vess asked as they walked toward the hangar bay where the Aurora waited. Elena looked up at the dome above them, beyond which lay the stars and the future that awaited them all. "Now," she said, "humanity answers the call." In the void between stars, the lone Shard collective ship that had retreated from the battle sent its data back to the main fleet. Information about Earth, about humans, about their unexpected survival and their surprising strength. The collective processed this information, integrating it into their shared consciousness. Humans were a variable they had not accounted for, an unexpected factor in their careful calculations of galactic conquest. The high crystal, central intelligence of the collective analyzed the battle data repeatedly. The humans had adapted quickly, finding a weakness that no other species had identified. Their resonance disruptors had damaged not just the ship, but had briefly disrupted the link between the ship's crystalline consciousness and the greater collective mind. This was concerning. Orders were transmitted throughout the collective. The invasion of the Thelian homeworld would be delayed. Resources would be redirected. A new priority emerged: locate and eliminate the human threat before it could spread. But even as the collective prepared its response, other signals were spreading through the galaxy. The news that humans, the legendary defenders of the last war, believed extinct for centuries, had returned to challenge the unstoppable Shard collective. On countless worlds under collective threat, beings looked to the stars with something they had not felt in years: hope. And in the darkness between worlds, a message began to echo, passed from ship to ship, from world to world, a whisper growing into a chorus: "Humanity has answered the call."